Welcome to the Destiny EDU podcast. I am BJ Barango, creative strategist at Destiny Education. On today's episode of the podcast, we take a look at those soft skills that can boost your employability. Now, let's start off with what are soft skills? Unlike hard skills, maybe technical skills, which can be proven or measured, soft skills are intangible and difficult to quantify. Some examples of soft skills include analytical thinking, verbal and written communication, and leadership. Research from the Society of Human Resource Management found that technical abilities like reading comprehension and mathematics aren't prized as much as soft skills, meaning you have to bring more to the table than, say, great sales numbers, coding languages, and test scores. Basically, you can be the best at what you do, but if your soft skills aren't cutting it, you're limiting your chances of career success. Now, you've got a reputation for being the best coder or editor or mechanic or whatever, but it amounts to little if you don't work well with others. Some of the most important professional skills for workers and employees alike simply can't be taught in a classroom or measured on paper. Now, these traits are called soft skills, and they are more crucial to your job search and overall career than you think. I recently sat with the head youth engagement and learning at Jobberman Nigeria, Precious Ajoonu. She is a renowned recruiter and human resource expert. She gave some insight into soft skills and what recruiters are mostly looking for in candidates. Well, let's get into that conversation. Once again, welcome to Destiny EDU Podcast. You've been in the HR system and you've been recruiting for companies for a while now. What would you say is the biggest barrier of getting those dignified jobs?
So it's mostly finding skilled labor, and I will explain what I mean. Because we're still largely certificate driven as a people, especially here, it's sometimes difficult to find that blend of both technical and soft skills in a candidate. And then when you also look at think about the fact that we don't have so many job openings anyway, so you're really looking for a star, right? You will typically find folks who are unskilled. That is if you ask me for one thing, it will be people applying for jobs, just hoping for the best. I can give you an example. It's not uncommon to put up an ad for a doctor and then find an engineer apply, just hoping that you would. I don't know how it works, but yes, that happens a lot. So it will be finding that skilled personnel. That would be our biggest challenge in the HR space. Yeah.
Wow. The one about getting a doctor, an engineer apply for a doctor's position is quite shocking. But if you will say education, for some time now, education has taken a diverse shift. And this due to the pandemic of the COVID-19 pandemic, how it came on and everything that happened, we saw the emergence of online education. Now, what we say is the role of online education in closing the skills gap in the Nigerian labor market or jobs market? Do you think that they're playing a good role in closing that skills or education gap, so to speak, in access to job opportunities in the country?
I definitely think so. And I feel like if there's one thing that young people really need to know, there's such a thing called Google University. There's such a thing called YouTube University. This is the skills revolution, and technology is helping us. So yes, it's helping to answer your question. But the other question now becomes access, right? We have a lot of young people who do not have access to data. When you think about some of the learning materials on some of these websites, HD videos, etc. I was thrown out of this call just because my other internet provider was not cooperating, right? So we still have those unique challenges, on this side of the Atlantic. However, I think that, and I can give an example with Jobberman. As someone who created our soft skills training, etc. Before COVID, we had a clear implementation plan. But as soon as COVID happened, we were able to accelerate our implementation thanks to online learning, right? So through the likes of Coursera, Thinkific, Telegram, we're boasting of numbers. By the end of September, we should have trained over 200,000 people. That would not be possible in physical classrooms, especially now. So there's scale potential with online learning, and then there's also accessibility potential with online learning. So yes.
Okay, interesting concept there for the online learning, because that is a new trend and that is here to stay. And it's actually helping people, fix their time with work, and also trying to get an education to boost their career or uplift themselves. But then what do you say will be like the prevailing trends with job seekers from your jobberman experience? Something that you say, oh, this is a trend but needs to stop, or this is a trend and it needs to go forward. We need to, continue with this trend because it's good for job seekers.
All right. So in terms of what we need to stop doing as job seekers immediately is we need to now learn how to write a good CV. When you think about the fact that your CV is the first thing a recruiter would see, that if you have less than 5 years experience, for example, you have no business having a 10-page CV. You have no business having a 3-page CV even. You should be in 1 page or in 2 pages maximum, right? Even I have over 12 years of experience. I still have a 2-page CV. So the CV is definitely the first thing. And then, of course, following the CV is how to write your CV for an ATS. You must know that your CV is reviewed by something called an applicant tracking system, and that's a bot, right? It's technology. So you need to learn how to use keywords to optimize your CV for technology, so to speak. And then the second one, what we need to continue to do is to upskill. I see a lot of young people taking advantage of, the skill opportunity. I mean, some young people are here. Some young people are online learning, whether it's Jobberman, whether it's Coursera, Udemy, etc. You need to upskill. I see young people leveraging social media to sell themselves. It's extremely important. We are in the visibility generation as well. So you need to be visible. So I would say continue to manage your digital footprints, and then, of course, learn how to write a good CV for an ATS.
Well, you talked about the good CV. Let me just bring this up to you. What, apart from the 2-pager CV and 1-pager CV, what else should be in a CV?
So you want to have, so I would say what shouldn't be in a CV, for example, your marital status, etc. shouldn't show up, personal information, anything that increases bias. Your picture, for example, stay away. In your CV, you want to highlight your skill set, right? And you want it to fit the job that you've applied for. So back to my example, if you are a doctor and you're applying to, for the role of a medical doctor, you want your CV to speak to that role, and then you want to focus on keywords. So when we send out applications, we have keywords that the ATS would also recognize. So if I say agile, I'm looking for an agile etc etc. It helps for you to have agile on your CV as well. So I often say don't have one generic CV. Please spend the time to tailor your CV to each job application. Do not send generic CVs. Yes.
Now, do you think there are like certain limitations when it comes to people, let's say Nigerians, who are seeking for dignified jobs on a global front?
So I think the answer is yes and no, Boma. I hope you can hear me. I think the answer is yes and no. Okay, great. The answer is yes and no. And as someone who's led training sessions, for multinationals across Africa, the answer is yes and no. What you need to do as a young person, and I often say this, your skill set must be global. Whatever you're learning, you are preparing yourself for a global market, right? And it's the same thing. A laptop in Nigeria is a laptop in India, is a laptop in China, etc. So you want to make sure that what you're learning is global, right? Whatever it is that I'm learning is global. But where I know a lot of Nigerians struggle, beyond us not having enough maybe opportunities for Nigerians, I won't speak to that. But where I know we struggle is around soft skills, right? So I do training for especially people in tech who, yes, they, technically they understand, but when you want to have meetings across time zones where you need to be culturally appropriate, for example, and you need to be able to communicate across cultures, that's where we struggle sometimes. And the good news is all of that can be learned, If you try Google University, I'm sure yourself as well, all of that can be learned. You can be upskilled to be able to compete in the global talent field. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, as a recruiter, would you say that there, let me just, I have this question on the Q&A from Paul Kiru. Is an American or a foreign degree important in terms of like seeking job opportunities, even right here in the Nigerian jobs market or maybe in the global market?
Yeah, I'm going to be very careful in answering that question. Again, I'm not going to say yes or no, because either a yes or a no are limiting constructs, right? It stops learning. So I'm not going to say yes or no. But this is what I would say. As someone who had a first degree here and my second degree in England, I would definitely say that it helped broaden my horizon for sure. In terms of being talent, though, I don't think just having a degree from an American university is going to be enough for you to work in my team, for example. However, do you have the skill set? So whether you went to school in Unsuka or you went to school in America, what any recruiter will be looking for is that you have the skill set for that job. And then, of course, that you're also a culture fit for the organization where you're trying to work at, and that's where sometimes the international exposure helps, because sometimes it takes care of, culture fit, etc., etc. However, you can be excellent anywhere, you study. Just make sure that you have the relevant skill sets is what I would say.
The relevant skill sets, really important. I mean, you've had on that for the duration of this conversation, the relevant skill set. And I believe that those listening right now will understand what that means, the relevant skill set. Well, thank you so much and for joining us on today's conversation. It was a pleasure having you share your thoughts with us today. Thanks for your time. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap this session up?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being resilient with me every time I dropped off. That's one. And I'm just going to close and talk about resilience, right? COVID has happened. The world as we know it has changed forever. If you're going to stay relevant, you have to be resilient. You have to be agile. Sometimes you learn a skill today, you wake up tomorrow morning, it's obsolete. So you need to be ready and committed to continuous learning. Right? It's a learning continuum. No, like those days where you go to school and then you keep the certificate under the box, it doesn't work anymore. So you have to keep learning, learn on the job, learn on, learn online, do whatever it is that you have to do, but you have to be very resilient in your approach to your career, advancement. That's all I would say.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.